Chapter 20 Ahribaal can lick my Ahribaal bag. A common sentiment it seems, as corroborated by the dev commentary. This map's gimmick is that there are constant tile changes, something I have no doubt was incredibly painful to do. I understand the basic concept, and given enough time and motivation, I think I could recreate the tile changing events. Tile changes are actually quite simple, just tedious. Plan of attack is to use Ashley's capped strength stat and Fianna's high speed stat to alpha strike the bow warrior and air caliber mage and secure the bottom ruins. After that, try to keep everyone on dry land and really go from there. I know there'll be reinforcements, and I know this chapter is an ungodly difficulty spike, and I'm expecting to need to reset. If any chapter is going to make me do it, it's this one. We're not completely boned because Raccoon has arrived from Ernst somehow and will join us in the battle. Given the immediacy of enemy action, he's absolutely going to see plenty of use, and with a strat I really enjoy employing but haven't been able to use thus far: box strats. The reinforcements are rather non-stop. Combine that with the unpredictable nature of the swamp, and the best piece of advice I can give is keep moving, don't sit around in one spot. If you remain mobile, then when the swamp opens up fully, you can fully exploit it as one big group rather than trying to regroup after being split by the swamp. I ended up getting bogged down by the berserk staff, and it was only my overpreparedness and a bit of serendipity that saved me. A lot went wrong, but enough went right. Restore being D-rank, Chandra having D-rank staves and being close enough to Orion and his convoy, and Luca being tucked away in the corner meant that the situation happened to be under control. The flyers got a bit bogged down at the bottom, and with the spawn of a silver bow Maleduin, I thought for sure I was buggered. Again, overpreparedness in the form of Susan as the extra flyer and moving as far away as possible saved Fianna from certain doom, because guess what, I've only got one Delphi shield. And my convoy is now full. I should have everything I need, but I recall there's the standard FE7 shopping chapter in DLATMOL before Endgame, which will for sure be incredibly welcome. I've decided that Orion is underperforming, possibly because I didn't give him Alpha's drops, and I'm going to try to fast lane him up to level 20. I'd really rather not have to burn an energy drop on a unit that previously capped strength well before promotion. Maybe Ronnie's stealing his growths. Anyway, don't take too long to deal with the bosses because every second turn 2 Necro Dragons will spawn. I want to be done with this chapter, so I'm not sticking around to farm them, though I will kill the 2 that showed up before seizing because the opportunity presented itself. This is a headache of a map, but quite unlike anything else I've seen. FE7 had that Gaiden chapter, but that was quite simply taking away large blocks of tiles that mostly just impeded you in an annoying way, as opposed to this chapter where tiles come and go in small amounts, just enough to connect the islands, and when they go away and you find someone out of position, it feels more like your fault, or the fault of the enemy units pushing you back, rather than a platform just disappearing. The bottom part of the map is a chin scratcher for sure. You can secure the ruins easy enough, but how are you supposed to approach the ballista without a Delphi shield? Maybe it actually fulfills its purpose as a no-fly zone, and the enemy Sword Reaver Cyclops and Zerkers, Gargoyles and Wyvern reinforcements would require further box stratting by your main force, perhaps intentionally constricted on the islands. It doesn't seem like the boss can one-hit anyone with her siege magic, but I definitely wouldn't want to be dealing with that and other attacks on the same turn without a dedicated magnet, which seemed to be Ronnie. I'm sure you could finagle a magnet strat amongst the box strat. It's the sign of a good map, I'd say, where you can theorise about a fair few different strategies and how you have to tackle a map with tools you have. Without a Delphi shield, a door is closed. If you'd use bolting, the opening would be riskier because of the air caliber sage. If your restore staves aren't in order, a berserk unit can start to wreak havoc because for some ungodly reason you can't block them. The chapter progressing in a segmented fashion and then eventually fully opening up is also not something typically seen. For sure, most maps that would try to be dynamic in such a fashion would likely close off areas, seeing them as redundant. I wouldn't say any part of the map is redundant once you move past it, even if it's just the fact that reinforcements will spawn there. I remember Endgame kicking my shit in, but for the moment I'll put the claim as Ahribaal Chapter 20 as the hardest chapter in the game. Chapter 21 is unfortunately not the last Fog of War chapter in the game, but it does look mercifully short and sweet. Not a lot of space, seems like a very compact map. Of course, that might mean enemy density has increased significantly too. There's a guide and chapter requirement: clear this map in 15 turns. Given the size of it, I can't really see that being a big problem. I'm going to save some of my torch uses for that guidance. I know what's coming and I also really want to talk about it. Taking a page out of Ghost Ship's book, the most dangerous threat is death goyles out of fog. They're fast and strong, and if you don't know where they are, they can easily kill one of your units. The gimmick of this map, as forewarned, is that the boss is apparently invincible. However, there are two houses where you spawn and a third one with an important post-game lady that have information about what to do. Torching up the right and you'll notice a sage marked as a boss. You might also notice when you beat him that he doesn't award experience. The map lays it out very clearly. You have to kill the main boss at the same time you kill the last of these three bosses scattered throughout the map. They're in pretty obvious locations, even with fog you can pinpoint them. Now, executing this is a problem wholly down to Fuwades being absurdly strong. 27 speed is more than enough to double almost everyone in your army. Combine that with her Throne of Void and you'll be lucky to break a 70% hit rate. However, her sword is magic, so your mages can laugh off her attacks. A neat little map, very much a needed break after the headache that was the previous chapter. It was bad enough with Mr. Surprise. I think I'll just do as the map says and continue in ignorance as to what happens if you don't do this map right. We learn that civilians don't grant experience points, and that 1 out of 3 of the Darkseid's leadership are reasonable. We can't judge too harshly, only 2 out of 3 people leading our army are reasonable. Fucking psycho bitch. We also see phrases like 3 houses and light and dark, so I think the game is becoming self-aware. Yeah, I thought I'd just let the dev commentary introduce this one. He's right, this is one of the chapters I was most looking forward to discussing. Now, cutting the deployment slots down to 7 is harsh, but it makes sense. Definitely bring your best. I know speed is a factor here, but I think deploying infantry that can all keep up with each other might be a safer bet. I would call this map an arena map. One of your units, best bet is Orion, is locked in a room and it's your job to hit a certain tile and rescue him. There's no incentive to have Orion fight any more than he has to. None of the enemies in the arena grant experience. I think there could have been more done with the arena, but I'm thinking of porting Radiant Dawn tower tiles like Wardwood into the arena, which sounds like a pain, so it's not a huge deal. There are in fact 2 arenas, and the Tactician goes in next. This is much more dangerous as the Tactician doesn't have convoy access and can't teleport an elixir in if things get dicey. I had to reset this chapter last playthrough and I was none too happy about it because the enemy Maleduin came 8 tiles out of fog with no prior line of sight and one-shot Shermie with a Sword Slayer. Again, try to justify Fog of War. Why can't I move Orion 10 tiles out of fog and snipe an enemy with a steel bow with no prior line of sight? How's that less unfair? I fucking hate Fog of War. Anyway, we get a Hammer, which makes me feel bad about binning Capricornus. We do an infantry rescue chain, which is a lot less exciting than a normal cavalry rescue chain, and we prepare to take the body ring and also fight the boss, I guess. He's no joke, he's going to hit, and he's going to hit very hard. Yes, he's slow, but that's the only saving grace. And despite his poor speed, he still has more than enough avoid. Like most Gaiden chapters in DLATMOL, it's fun. It's got a unique gimmick that is done very well. I like it. Good job. FE7 probably has the best title drops of the series. Yes, as you really should have expected, Durga is alive. The mention of the Malkaean coast brings a memory from one playthrough where an enemy Skellyman came 6 tiles out of fog with a bow and 5x3 Myr at a 2% chance. Then on another playthrough I watched an enemy get a 1% crit on the same map. It is a cursed fucking map and I refuse to play it anymore. But here, yes, the inspiration is very clear. The deployment limit continues to swell all the way up to 16. It can't hurt to give Arjun a chance, even if the drops went to the Tactician to alleviate his middling performance. Looks like another standard slog. We're approaching Endgame and dangerous things like Silvers and Necro Dragons are in abundance. Reavers, siege weapons and promoted flyers are also here to catch you off guard. By around turn 8, a Berserker reinforcement will also make their way to the top ruin and destroy it. It's guarded by a Necro Dragon, Siege Tome, 2 to 3 range Giant Bow, and Abomination with High Mage and Thimble Vetatome. I'd start praying if you don't have a decently bulky flyer with a Delphi shield, because pushing past the mountains and those mixed attackers is incredibly rough. The right and middle of the map are incredibly tame by comparison. The Tarvos and Maleduin reinforcements can actually be taken out by a slightly well-levelled Arjun with Carmen. While the eyeballs can be destroyed risk-free by Chandra. Turn 10 is when shit hits the fan. Durga gets bored and starts to come for you. Another element of unpredictability you really don't need, especially because she's got a posse of heroes with varied weapons joining her. There is good news, she refuses to use a sword, so you can bait her out with anyone fast and bulky enough that isn't Orion. Given their equal speed stat and Durga's backup of a rune sword hero, I thought Dale with a sword reaver would do a good job. With her sword catcher out just as planned, Ty did his thing. I am so glad I bought 3 Guandaos. After that, your trials are over. It's a small matter of mopping up. Remembering that there is still a Necro Dragon up there, and dealing with a very non-threatening boss. I'm certain there is a boss conversation between Durga and Arjun, but I just did not have the time for that. Durga will also join after this chapter with no special requirement. Compared to Shermie, last playthrough she was almost flat out better, with Shermie staying around because she could use the gold brand. Similar story here, but I'm expecting Shermie to overtake her. I wouldn't rate this chapter necessarily harder than the previous ones, but you are a lot more susceptible to RNG fuckery. I didn't reset on the previous 3 chapters. I had to reset a few times on this chapter. Once when I realised I couldn't get to the top ruin in time, once when I tried to have Ashley rush it to no avail, and once when Arjun was getting dogshit levels. I did try these different strats, but ultimately I mostly did the same as the first time with a bit more haste. Ashley still baited out the enemy wyverns, but immediately pivoted to the left side for the ruins, and I made Orion absolutely bolt past the mountains, and used Dale's mountain walking to get him through too. Tact went up there to dispense heals, and Ty went up there for general crit support. Mounts all went to the right because it's open terrain, and Kiri and Chandra handled the middle by themselves. Maximilian trade offers us. We receive Weaver's Severed Head, Grizzly, Goldbrand and Durga. He receives nothing at all, don't worry about it, haha. We're off to Endgame. Maximilian insists on holding off several dozen dudes by himself while we descend into a lair of spooky ghosts. Frisia isn't joking around. I took her advice last time and I intend to do it again. Sadly, I think Francine's time is done, partially because Emma's been on the roid, and partially because while advice of investing a speedwing into her and being hunky-dory is appreciated, I'd rather spend it elsewhere. I'm not handing out all of my boosters, just most of them, and it's mostly patching units' weaknesses up. The Tactician has been boosted by Apha's drop, so he's not getting any. To the map, this is what I prefer endgames to look like. Your elite army versus an almost equally strong and equally sized elite enemy. I had to reset on this one too. Turns out taking a mixed magical and physical assault is best left to Orion. I was really expecting reinforcement from the bottom closed off walls, maybe they appear if you take too long. Once separated, the enemies can be picked off at your leisure, except with the case of the left flank as I mentioned. Moving up to the boss, you can probably one-shot the Skelly Man with Kiri, but I couldn't get her in range. And we have another surprise, again not as bad as Mr. Surprise and his fun surprise, but there's a second boss to fight, quite a bit more dangerous than the Skelly Man. Still, against overwhelming numbers, he'll fall. Orion takes his sweet sword and gets a pretty huge power boost, and we're on to another chapter that stuck out as very interesting, although for very different reasons to all the rest. I dub this chapter Walk and Talk. Yes, we are throwing basically all pretense of gameplay away for solemn flashbacks and lore dumps. No better time than this, I suppose, to discuss Frisia and why she's such a fucking psycho bitch. We know that she's Brahma's daughter and she despises the Dark Sect and their worship of the Unspoken One, but her hatred runs deeper than mere light versus dark, good versus evil. Something personal had to have happened to her. The destruction of her dragonkin was Max Power's doing. While he was allied with the Dark Sect, it wasn't the sect themselves that brought about the destruction. And what about housing the Sanguine Codex in her own temple? The Dark Sect's most powerful and treasured artifact housing all knowledge gained by the Unspoken One. A case of friends close and enemies closer perhaps. I might talk more about what the Codex might possibly be later on, but for now we can answer the question of why Frisia gets so fuck mad angry about the sect. Yes, Brahma was killed by the Unspoken One, Zahak, and Frisia rewrote history for the benefit of humankind to save them from the despair and grief of losing their goddess. Playing Truth, Despair and Hope last chapter pays off a bit better now knowing this. So the map, nothing doing, just move your dudes. I don't think there's ever been a chapter like this in FE proper. The execution has to be on point for something like this to work, and it does here. We're in the endgame, everything is culminating into this final battle, the stakes are high and learning more context around the upcoming battle raises them even higher. These endgame chapters were an absolute turning point for me. Prior, yes, the hack was good with a lot of unique map ideas and the additional gameplay elements of things like FE8 monsters and 3x effectiveness added some freshness and excitement. But having the guts to do a chapter with no combat right before we fight the ultimate threat built up over almost the entire game and having the know-how to do it well, I still don't personally like it better than Tacthack, but I'll say that it may very well be better than Tacthack. I might put it like this, DLATMOL's sum of parts are excellent, but Tacthack's whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Or personal opinion, you know. Let's go fight the masked man. Fuck yeah, here we go! Can you really fault the dev for using Twilight of the Gods for this one? I certainly can't, it's bloody well earned it. There's not much between us and the boss, but once we get to him, oh boy are we in for it. These are some ridiculous stats, not seen since the likes of Siegfried. Only legendary weapons, minus no dens, plus the profane blade, can hope to scratch Zahak. Pinch the legendary weapons off the enemies and square up to the boss. Zahak puts out so much damage that my main healers don't have enough magic to sustain them with just one use of Fortify. Not ideal, but alright, we're doing good damage to him and we have control of the situation. Now we just need to...
teleport!
Fuck. Oh, good thing Zahak also has the power of Rain of Spiders, just what we needed. I was prepared for this, but that doesn't make it any easier to deal with. At least with the power of the Profane Blade, most of the trash can be cleared up with no real worry. I seem to recall last playthrough I got a lucky crit, probably Shermie with the Gold Brand. Here's hoping for a repeat. Well, sort of. I've got him down to the wire. I'm short 5 damage and... oh wow, I forgot Dunbol's hits absurdly hard. That's a guaranteed kill. I've got him. I can beat the game just by... wait, what about Maximilian? Yes, on my previous playthrough, when I played through this chapter, I was about to beat Zahak and a little thought popped into my head. I've been faked out. This isn't the end. I was quite impressed, both with the game for duping me and myself for being unduped at the very last moment. This was a focal point of my initial pre-idea of wanting to talk about DLATMOL when I beat it back in February 2021. No FE game story set up to such a climactic event only to pull the rug out from underneath you so effectively. So much focus is given to Zahak and this final battle. You have legendary weapons, almost your entire army is promoted. It has the absolute feel and even look of Endgame, that's the Dragon's Gate tileset. But it isn't Endgame. Bravo! The pacing of this game's story is fantastic, and while Tacthack does something similar with Mr. Surprise and Yormund the Mighty, the story makes it clear that you are to go through Mr. Surprise to get to Yormund and beat the game. Here, you know Maximilian is still out there, not to be trusted, conniving and scheming as early as Chapter 9, but nothing is said of it in all 3 parts of this chapter after you part ways. So guess what? We're off to go face Maximilian, and fake Endgame is going to be considered a walk in the park by comparison.